Okay, let's get started. Welcome back, kids, to Pykidz, a kid developer initiative. We have been covering Python for a while now. Last time we covered using lists, right? Composite data type called lists, and we covered it in multiple videos. This time we will look at other things, other such composite types. So, as I always say, I learn. So when you learn these concepts, when we try these things out, actually use the terminal or use your editor to actually develop these things, try these things out. That's the best way to learn, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Let's get on with it. Okay, so we covered lists and now we are going to cover tuples in this video. In the subsequent videos, we'll cover maps and sets, right? Maps or dicts and sets. Okay, let us get on with it then. What are tuples? Tuples are nothing but they are very similar to lists. There are some differences, and what we'll do is we'll learn by comparing lists with tuples. So we can maybe define lists as tuples as a list with params, right? So maybe we can start by doing some examples. So I'm going to now go to Python. This will take us to the shell. Here, let me try to define first a tuple, right? I'm tired of using ternary friends, so I'm going to use some other set of my own friends, and these are not really my friends, but yeah. The first three names are probably known to your parents. They are a famous set of names of movie characters, Hindi movie characters. Others I'm just making up. Now, if you look at this, this looks awfully like a list, but instead of square brackets, I have these parentheses, right? So this is a definition, and now let us just try to see what my friends is, and you will see that's a tuple. So as I said, we will compare lists and tuples, and that's the best way to understand tuples. So lists are ordered and so are tuples. So let us actually try this out and see, right? So I am going to create another my friends, and I use the same data, but I'm going to create a different variable. Now, but what I'm going to do is, as usual, I'm going to change the order, right? I'm going to take Akbar out from here and put it, say, for beam. If you look at it, the contents are pretty much the same, right? Same set of 6 names. Now if I try to do my friends, is it equal to my friends? Which is true, but if I try to do it with other, it's false, because though the contents are same, the order matters, just like lists, right? Now lists also can contain arbitrary objects, including nested items, and so can tuples, very similar, right? So if I take here, so let us say I create a tuple, I can actually have this integer, I can add a string, I can add a boolean, and then maybe I can add a list inside it. It can contain anything, right? So why not a list? So the square brackets come into play, and then I have, so this is, sorry, if I look at this, 2 is an integer, 2.0 is a double or a float, and then you have Aman. Let's say this is the list, and then you have this is actually a tuple. I want to also add that in, so that we have all sort of variety, right? 2.2. So if you look at this tube, so all of these guys, and if I look at the type of this class tuple. So next one on the list is list elements can be accessed by index, and so can tuples. So till now everything is same, right? So let us show that. I have my friends, which is a tuple, right? We can check that. Type my friends, it's a tuple, and I can do my friends. How do you do index? It's a, yeah, you got Amar, right? This is my friends, and when you index the 0th element, you got Amar. And similarly, if I try to do tube and I do 0 of that, I get 1, right? And if I do say 2 of it, or so it works, right? It will work for 1, it will work for 2, it will actually work for 3 too. Now if you actually try to find the type of this, what do you expect? It's a list. And if you try to find the this, it's actually going to be a tuple, right? Because it's the tuple. And we obviously can do things like len, right? Len works with tuples too. Now let us come to the last one. So the last one is lists are dynamic and mutable, but tuples are not. This is the key difference. This is what differentiates a tuple from a list. Let me show you this. You see, like just like list, I have methods in tuples also, right? So this will give, this actually does not, this is one thing in Python. If you do this, you actually get back the actual function, actual method inside, which is present inside the tuple. If you do this, it actually executes this one, right? So here I can't do count. We'll see why we can't do count later on. But let me first look at dir of my friends. This allows me to do is for any object in Python, you can say dir of that object, and it will give you the directory, the methods and the attributes in that object, right? That's very useful, right? So if you look at this, I had defined a list somewhere, right? So this was a list. So let me take this and assign it to L equal to this. Let's do that. And then I want to do dir of L. I'll just do this also. Now if you look here, you have the method append in the list, and then you also have a method remove. Now look at the same thing for a tuple. You don't see an append, you don't see a remove. Clearly means that you cannot add or remove elements from a tuple. Tuples are immutable. Immutable means it cannot be changed. Once you define them, they stay the same. Let us try to just say change a value, right? So let us say t tube 2, what is 2? It is true. Let us just change it to false. Now see there, the error message clearly says type error, tuple object does not support item assignment. You cannot change items in a tuple. So this is the core difference, the most important difference of a tuple. So you list, you can do a lot of stuff, you can change things, but tuple you can do almost everything on a list, but you cannot change its contents. It will remain the same. Once you define it, it's done, it's locked, right? And that can be a good thing sometimes. We'll see that a little more later. Hope that makes sense. Let us continue. So you can do tuple operations, and before I do that, I will want to just quickly show you what we tried earlier. We tried to do a count, right? And this did not work, right? So I am going to show you something else which you can do with start count. If you do this, see here, this is another thing you can do to understand a little bit about these methods. On the command line, you can use help to find out more. I showed dir, which gives you a list of methods, and for each method you can get some information about what can be done with that method by using help. Hope that makes sense. So now let's get out of this and then let's go into. So tuples can be used to do different kind of operations. We can, very similar to a list, right? We can do indexing, slicing, membership. Let us do some of those, and so that you get a revision of what you can do with lists, but also understand how tuples are so similar to lists. So I can do my friends and I can do indexing like this. So remember last time I hope you tried this with lists, and maybe now you understand what -1 does. And I can also do slicing. I can do something like this. This is slicing syntax, right? The colon is this gives me nothing because it's coming from back. So it's the front index and the back index, right? So this doesn't work. So if you go like this, you get only Boris because that's the last one. Now if I go the other way, so this is the last 3 and the last one, right? So Bashir and so you can do this kind of. Similarly, I can do, say, one more. So this is all slicing, right? You tried the exact same thing with. Hopefully, you tried these with lists too. So tuples work the same way in slicing, both positive and negative integers. And obviously, you can do not in and ins, right? We learned this earlier. So this is the membership stuff. So I can do, say, let us say I want to do tubes equal to, let us just go with the articles in English, right? Now if I look at tubes, this is the same value. Now I actually can do I in tubes and it will say true. So like just like in, I can also do not in. So if I do not in of this, it will be false because it's there, A is there, right? So it will, if I do and not in, obviously it is not there in the list of articles, right? So that works. Not a list, sorry, a tuple. See, I am mixing it up because they are so similar, right? So we will go back and look at the difference again, but let us finish this off. We want to also cover truthy and falsy. So that nature we will cover now. So if I look at type of, so this is a tuple, right? And if I do a, for truthy falsy, what do? We actually cast it to a bool, and you will see that it is no longer, it's a false, it's a falsy. If it's an empty tuple, it's falsy, just like an empty list is falsy. Now if I have to create even one element, so if I look at this before this is again a tuple, right? And then if I want to find out if this is truthy, it is true. So we covered some basic things on tuples. Now I want to reiterate this, reiterate that tuples are immutable. Immutable means it cannot be changed once it's created, right? So now I'm going to show you this with some examples as usual, right? So the primary use of a tuple is when you know that you don't want to change the contents, that's when you use a tuple instead of a list, right? And this comes in handy in programming many times. It is considered as a good practice. You can't do it all the time, but there are many times it comes handy. So immutability, I mean. So let me do this. I am going to take my friends. I already have my friends. I'm going to slice it 0 and 2. Slicing works for tuples, and then I'm going to do my friends, and I'm going to do 3. So this slicing syntax is the same. Remember the square brackets with the colon. Though these are tuples and not lists, the syntax is the same, right? So this is, if I just see my friends, it had Amar, Akbar, Anthony, Bashir, Beam, Boris, because I did 0 to 2, so that is Amar and Akbar, and 3 onwards, which is Bashir, Beam and Boris. So you see only 5 of them, and it's still when I do that, it's still a tuple. So if I do this and if I do a type, cool, that's a type of tuple. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to do there is another method, built-in method called id. So I'm going to run this, and this gives you an identifier for an object, right? It's like roughly gives you an identifier. I'm just going to try this. So it returns an identity of an object, right? This is what id does, right? So just come out of this. So for this tuple which I was creating by slicing, I got this particular identifier. Now if I look at my id for friends, it's a totally different identifier, right? See, you can see the difference. One is, you can see the ending, right? 576, 560. So it's completely different. Now we had another my friend other, that will be again a totally different one. See, all of them are complete. Now I'm going to just do a comparison with lists so that you can see the difference, right? So if I am going to create an articles list, so lists are with square brackets, right? Earlier we created tuples, so here I'm creating a list, so it's square bracket based. I'm going to add 2 of them, and I am going to do articles of this. This has this id. Let us say I'm going to append. Let's start append. Sorry, I got a bit hasty, right? Now I'm adding the to the articles list, not a tuple list. Now you should remember, see, this is the idea, right? So keep this in mind. Now I'm going to, I added it, I'm going to check that. First of all, let us just look at articles, whether it's got the is there, right? So now I'm going to actually do an id of this articles. See this 4384, this is the old one, 692736, 4384 692736. So it actually went and changed the original object. I did not change. You cannot even add to a tuple, so it will not allow you to do that. So I can't show you this thing. So but you can see lists can be modified. Tuples will not allow you to do this. So you can use in order to understand mutability, you can use this id function. This inbuilt function allows you to see, oh, can something be remain the same? Can I actually change it, or things change, or is it a totally different object, right? You can probably try it with strings and even other things, right? So do that and check it out. We will do a couple more things with tuples. One is, you saw me earlier defining a one element tuple, right? And I did something different, right? I actually did, let me show you that. So this obviously is a, if I do a type of A, it's a tuple. Now what do you think this will be? You might actually think that, just should have again, let me do a type of A. This is just an int. So Python, when it just sees a value within parentheses, it thinks that you are just adding parentheses for some kind of a board mass kind of an operation, right? So it just ignores it. So this is the problem, that when you are trying to define a one element tuple, then you have to do a little bit of trickery. This is what I did last time. I put a comma. Now this is when Python understands, oh, you are actually trying to define a tuple with one element, and so I will go ahead and create that for you. So this seems a bit off, and every language has its rough edges, and this is one of the rough edges of Python. So you have to necessarily put a comma at the end so that Python does not get confused and say, oh, it's just an integer with parentheses, right? Now this is key. Another reason why this happens is because of how Python works. So in Python, you can we'll talk about functions, methods later on as well, and we have been using these functions and methods and these functions methods return something, right? Return a value. Now Python can actually return more than one values, and when it gets returned as more than one values, it actually returns back a tuple, right? And then you can use that tuple and you can easily unpack them. So I'm going to show you some things based on that. Let us look at that. And so let us look at our earlier example of articles, right? And I'm just going to stick with two of them for now. This is, now I'm going to show you unpacking. So with methods, when you return two elements, say I type in return a comma b, obviously I can't enter this because it will throw an error. What happens is that Python will pack them into, it will pack them means it will add them into a tuple, right? That's what Python does. But you can unpack also. The way you unpack a tuple is, you can say you know that this particular tuple has two elements, so I can create two variables and I can assign it directly to articles. In this process, what Python will do is, oh, I have now two variables on the left hand side and I have a tuple with two elements, and since I want to, this clearly tells that I have to unpack them, so I will take the first element of the tuple and assign it the first variable, and the second one the second variable. So I'll do this, and then I look at A and An, and they are matching. So this mechanism, this point of how Python works is one. So if you typically look at a programming language, when you have to assign, say let us say I have A is equal to 1 and I have B is equal to 3. Now typically when I have to exchange these values, like I want to assign A to A as 3 and B as 1, if you do directly A equal to B, what is going to happen? A is 3 and B is 3, so you already lost one value, right? So typically what happens in other programming languages is you use a intermediate variable called temp. So you say temp is equal to A, right? And then you say A is equal to B, and then you say B is equal to temp. So when you do this, if you look at A's value, it is 3 and B's value is 1. So this is how you do it this can be done in Python. In other languages, this is the only way to do it. But Python can do it more stylishly. So if I look at A is equal to 1 and B is equal to 3, I want to swap them. All I do is A comma B is equal to B comma A. So this is called so this b comma a is a tuple. It creates a tuple out of it because you have mentioned is b comma a, and that becomes a value, and it gets automatically assigned to, so packed into b and a is packed into one tuple and unpacked into a and b. So if I do this and look at a and b, it is swapped. This is the magic of Python. So the fact that when you define two variables, it automatically becomes a tuple packed into a tuple, and when you assign it again to two variables, it gets unpacked, allows you to do this kind of a smart thing with Python. It does not work in other languages, but in Python it works. Cool. I think we did enough of tuples. Tuples are necessarily lists, very much like lists, but they are immutable, right? This is the core learning which you need to carry about tuples. Okay, I think we are done for this class. I will catch you up again with maps and sets in the upcoming videos. Use the comments for any questions and keep watching, keep doing to learn. See you soon.